I tried not to fidget as he studied me in the silence of the now empty gym. I must admit to being a little amazed that he was actually looking at me. And no, I don't mean looking like, hey you over there, I see you standing there. I mean, he looked at me as if he really saw me. I could see his mind taking it all in. The style of my dress, the way my hair fell wildly around my shoulders. If there was one thing I knew for sure about most people, at least the people in my hood, was that their very human nature was selfish. Meaning, they were so self-centered. They had no time to study anybody else but themselves. Most folks formed an opinion about someone on sight and then just kind of stuck with that. Then it was back to focusing on their world, their bills, their problems, etc. Could it be possible he can truly see me? I was tempted to find out, but I decided against it because honestly, he scared the hell out of me. I think I really just wanted to leave and tell Dollar Bill I failed to get his magic staff and see what else he wanted me to do to get my mom back. Speaking of Dollar Bill, the little beeper, aka tracking device he bought, was blowing my hip up, which meant he wanted answers, and he wanted them now. Aren't you gonna get that? My eyes flew open at the sound of his deep voice, and there go my girly parts doing that crazy thing that only he can seem to make them do. His voice was so deep and manly. Barry White ain't got none on this brother. Nervously, I licked my lips and shook my head. His gaze fell to my mouth. He looked at my wet lips as if they were coated in fresh honey, and he, a bee. He took a step toward me, and I took one back. What are you? I asked, taking another step back for every step he took forward. Although it's true, he made my insides feel alive for the first time in my life, we still had the little issue on whether or not he was human. You don't have to be afraid of me, he spoke softly, while he continued to slowly stalk me. His mouth may have said, don't be afraid, but the look in his eyes was telling me something different. Not only should I be afraid, but if I wasn't ready to be devoured, I should probably run. I gave a little nervous laugh and said, yeah, right. I'm serious. I'll never hurt you, he continued. Are you a government experiment? My voice was extremely shaky. Like I said, this man was unraveling me. Ha! If the folks from my block could see their queen of the ghetto now. A government what? He stopped walking towards me. I couldn't hide the breath of relief that escaped me. I wish I could show you ladies what it felt like to be stalked by him. If you thought his anger was something, let me tell you, it had nothing on his lust. Something strange was happening to his face, around his mouth area. Oh my goodness, he was amused. He was laughing at me. A smile on his face just felt weird, like he didn't do it a lot, if at all. I couldn't help the look of surprise when he actually chuckled. Talk about a squeaky door that's barely opened. His deep chuckles made me feel good. I was glad I was the one to bring laughter to this man that probably never did it. Although I was glad he was laughing, even if it was at me, I still had the little issue of finding out what he was. Are you a vampire? I whispered, putting my hand to my throat. Amazingly, he laughed harder. I mean, this time it was a full-out laugh. Okay, enough of the jokes at my expense. One can only take so much of that. What's so funny? I asked, putting my hand on my hip. You're serious, aren't you? He said between chuckles. Yes, I'm serious. I saw Dracula. No, I'm not a government experiment, and I'm not a vampire. I'm just a man. He shook his head at me as if I was the crazy one. So, I didn't just see you throw a table across the room like it was an egg. I have never seen a man with your kind of strength. Just because you have never seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, he asked, taking another step towards me. I thought about his words before I responded. I've seen it, but like in the movies, the Avengers, Hulk smash. His smile reappeared in my words. Now that he brought it out and dusted off, he really had a very nice smile. The kind of smile that made a girl feel special. Well, you know what they say, fact is stranger than fiction. He threw up his hands, as if we were talking about the weather or some other common occurrence like that. Okay, well, if you're not a government experiment, do they know about you? My question made his smile disappear. In fact, it turned completely upside down, and he was now scowling at me again. So, on a side note, I definitely preferred his smiles to his frowns. Look, it ain't their business, and it ain't yours either, so drop it, he barked at me. I'm just a man. I breathe, I eat, I sleep. When it's my time, I'll die. That's it. I don't like to talk about it, okay? I nodded, not wanting to stir his anger in the least. He seemed calmer than he had been earlier, and I wanted to make sure he stayed that way. Why didn't you let the police take me to jail? My voice barely louder than a whisper. He stared at me for a long time. His eyes took their time lingering on certain parts of my body. I fidgeted under his gaze. This was too intense for me. Mr. Lustful was back, and just like that, Hulk smash was gone. This man's mood changed like the wind. I have never needed the police to handle my issues. I knew he spoke the truth. I had heard stories about the way he dealt with those foolish enough to cross him. Well, are you going to kill me? I asked. I'm going to keep you, he responded. Okay, not what I expected. I don't understand. What do you mean by keep me? In our culture, when someone commits a crime against someone else, they pay for their transgression with money. Do you have any money? He asked. Great. He's going to use extortion against me. I've got about $7, I said in a hopeful voice. He shook his head and chuckled again. Girly part meltdown. Nah, sweetheart, that's not enough. How much do you want? My voice quivered, because he had started slowly stalking me again. But I was determined not to get within his reach. Everything in my body warned against it. So for every step he took forward, I took one back. $1 million, he said. What? My mouth fell open. American? I asked. He had to be tripping. Nobody in the ghetto had that kind of money. Well, he continued, if you can't pay my price with cash, there is another way. I knew it. I knew it would come down to this. He could just forget about it. There was no way I was sleeping with him. He was too big, too fierce, too everything. I doubted I would survive a lay with him. For my first time, I had planned on it being with a regular-sized guy, a gentleman. Not this force of nature. He'd probably rip me apart. Oh, hell no. Lyon could see the wheels turning in her head as she nervously chewed on her plump bottom lip. He groaned. It took all the strength he had not to take that battered lip in his mouth and soothe it with his tongue. Soon, Lyon, he told himself. Real soon. What's the other way? She asked boldly, as if she dared him to say it and prove her thoughts right about him. Servitude, he growled. Once again, Butta's mouth fell open, right when she thought she had heard it all. Servitude? You mean like a slave? He couldn't have slapped her and shocked her more. I mean, you belong to me. You stay here with me, cook for me, clean for me. His smile became that of a predator. And when I wanted, you opened those pretty thighs for me. His words caused the air to whoosh out of her lungs, as the answering action to them seemed to affect her right between her thighs. She squeezed them closed, cutting off their filling. There was no room in the situation for that feeling. I think, she finally spoke, I'd rather go to jail. He took another step toward her. Have you ever served time before, Nuria? She wondered about the name he kept calling her. It was his third time using it. She wanted to tell him to stop, but it was something about the name and the way he said it that she liked. She shook her head. How much time could she get on a first offense? A little community service? She could do that. 1 to 3 years, he said, as if he could read her mind. Trust me, I know. She chewed on her bottom lip, her gaze going to the front door, judging the distance between her and it, and her chance at making it before he caught her. Her need to escape becoming more pressing than her need to breathe. He smiled at her, reading her mind again. You ain't gonna make it, sweetheart. Would you stop doing that? She snapped, frustrated. Doing what? He asked. Reading my thoughts. Nah, baby, I ain't no mind reader. I can just read you. Butta shook her head at him. She was an expert at wearing the mask, so she knew he was lying. It was probably one of his superpowers. She had just seen the Avengers last week, and to think, she thought that was all fiction, and here she was standing in front of the thug version of the Hulk. It was time for her to work her way on out of here. She had tallied here long enough. She softened her features. She would have to do the performance of her life right now. Look, she said, going into humble mode, a mode that had saved her numerous times. I am so sorry I tried to steal from you. But I've just realized I was raised wrong. Look, she said, pulling the book out of her cargo pants pocket. The title read, The Damages of Bad Parenting. According to this book, a lot of the mistakes I've made in life is due to my parenting. It took everything within Lyon to keep a straight face. 2 things he realized right now was that the punk Jackson was right about her. She was good and slippery as her namesake. Can you really make me pay for being raised wrong? Her eyes had gone big in her beautiful face, giving her the look of one of those little poor kids that's from a third world country. You know, the ones that said 2 cents a day and it'll feed them. You can't, can you? Who could? There's nobody in this world that heartless. She shook her head sadly. This girl was good. He was dealing with a full-fledged con artist. But you know what, Lyon? Something powerful happened here today. The sad look faded from her face, replaced by one of triumph. Today, I was changed. Opening her arms, she stood like a saint. I've decided I'm not going to do the things that my mother raised me to do. She nodded her head, as if that alone would convince him. I've decided I want to go back to school and continue to get my education. Lyon had to bite down on his bottom lip. He didn't want to laugh right out at her. He wanted to see how far she would go. I don't know. Maybe I'll become a doctor and open a free clinic right here in the hood so that I can help all the children like me with bad parents. She sounded so sincere. He was amazed at her ability. She spoke with deep, soulful eyes, as if the words could cure world hunger. And I'm ready to turn over a new leaf. Thank you. Thank you so much for helping me to see the error of my ways. I promise I'll do better. She didn't wait to see if he bought that. She just turned and made her way towards the front door. His bark of laughter filled the gym. Really? He said from behind her. She looked over her shoulders and saw him doubled over with laughter. Okay, so maybe he hadn't bought my bull, but that's just fine. Because while he was busy laughing his head off at me, I had managed to put a good distance between me and him. A great distance between me and the door. Run now, my mind screamed. I took off. See you later, clown. I'm gone. I pumped my arms and legs with everything I had within me. The door was just up ahead. I can taste my victory. I barely slowed when I got to the door. I put my hand on the handle, and right before I could pull, steel wrapped around my waist, lifting me completely off the ground. "Put me down," I yelled, going wild in his arms. I'm sure I don't have to tell you how frustrated I was. I had been so close to freedom, just to have it snatched away. I wanted to kill him. I kicked and tried to punch back at him, but nothing I did seemed to faze him. "Let me go!" "Calm down, Nuria," he growled in my ear, giving me a shake that made me instantly go limp and surrender. "Please," I cried, so close to tears that my raw throat burned unbearably. I was having a hard time swallowing. "Are you calm?" he asked, his warm breath caressing my ear and traveling down my neck, and yes, upsetting my girly parts again. I nodded, and he let me slide to my feet. Instantly, I stepped away from him, putting much-needed space between us. I knew if I let him get his paws on me, I would be in danger. "There's got to be another option. The slave thing ain't happening," I told him, as I wiped my sweaty palms on the front of my thighs, trying not to panic from the feeling of being trapped. My escape attempt didn't work, and that was the problem because my escape attempts always works. I am but a baby. "There is no other option. You need to accept your destiny." Destiny? Did this fool just say my destiny was to be his slave? Oh, hell no. I would rather die. Then a thought hit me like a brick. If I became his slave or whatever, let's just say maid, for political correctness of course. If I became his maid, then I could cook, clean, aka search his house for the staff, and once I find it, I can escape then. Take the staff to Dollar Bill, get lovely, and get on the first bus smoking out of Chicago. Oh yeah, I am but a baby. Suddenly, my lungs opened up, and that lump disappeared from my sore throat. I could breathe again. "How long will I have to be your maid?" "Slave," he corrected. "What is wrong with you? How could you say that word to a black woman in America?" I tried to use my ashamed mother's voice, but judging by the look on his face, he wasn't buying it. "Okay, slave," I relented. I didn't want to give in too easily. I was going to have to do what Lovely called the Kansas City Shuffle with this guy. I would keep him so thrown off, he would never guess my true intention.